Rumors of the Metroid Prime Trilogy on the Switch started all the way back when the console literally just launched and Prime 4 was only just announced. But now that the first game in the series finally popped its head out of the Switch's bushes, I think it's safe to say that Prime 4 is in the end zone of development, and if you give me a minute or two, I'll explain where all this wild speculation comes from. To be honest, I didn't really believe the rumors of Metroid Prime Trilogy coming to the Switch for, like, the first 2 years, mainly because I was just annoyed that so many leakers were swearing up and down it was coming in, like, 5 minutes, only to keep pushing it back. I always figured the trilogy had come out at some point, but only after Nintendo stopped being weird about bringing 64 GameCube and Wii games over to the Switch, and it took a long time for that to happen. But once the above average size then announced that Prime 4 was getting scrapped and restarted, it started making perfect sense to me where everyone was swearing on their dad's lives that Trilogy was done and ready to the point where some websites were actually accepting pre-orders. I mean, other than the fact that Prime games are awesome and will sell out the ass, what's the true goal of putting these games on Switch in the first place? Well, to get everyone ready for Prime 4, of course, which seems to be a game that Nintendo's taken dead seriously. I know it's hard to find many bad words on the internet about Metroid Prime games, but the reality is that there really weren't that many people who actually played them. Obviously, the sales are better than what you could call decent, and even the figures for the copies that sold at retail don't account for all the people who picked them up in the aftermarket. But even though Metroid Prime definitely has a fan base, the Switch sold over 100 million consoles, and I'd bet that more than half of the install base has never played a Prime game before. It seems how the best way to really fall in love with these games is to actually play it for yourself, since the trailers never really do them justice. What better way is there to ease new fans in than with a remaster of the first game, and possibly even 2 and 3? I mean, most movie theaters do the exact same thing whenever there's a new Jurassic Park, Ghostbusters, Avatar, or Time Cop coming out, so it makes sense for video games to do the same thing too. Hell, even for fans who love the originals, it's probably been a long time since most of us actually played them, so only good things can come out of refreshing everybody's memory with a remaster. Personally, I just replayed Prime 1 like 2 or 3 years ago, so I'm good on the remaster on the Switch, but I still think it's really cool to see. Of course, new original content's always better than rehashing old stuff, but that doesn't mean having the option to replay an old game with some new paint isn't still good, all things considered. I mean, according to this nice man I met at Software Etc. named Denzel, it only takes about 5 or 10 minutes to do HD remasters of old games, so it's not like it's hindering brand new games or anything like that. So while I do prefer new games, I don't lose sleep over ports, especially when there's a purpose to them like Metroid Prime. The idea of porting an old game to get people excited for the new one, though, then that begs the question of when's the best time to put an old game out? Well, Pikmin 3 was ported to the Switch in October of 2020, about 3 years before the release of Pikmin 4, so you might think that means that Prime 4 won't be ready till 2026 or something like that. But remember, 2020 was the year that all game development was straight to hell, so the Switch needed something to fill the void until Nintendo could get things back on track. Which meant that along with the Mario compilation that Nintendo seemingly didn't want to release in the first place, Pikmin 3 made the cut too. Now, could this game have just been in the cards for 2020 all along? Of course so, but I'd bet like $8 that if there was no PBR virus, and Pikmin 3 would have come out a lot closer to Pikmin 4. Again, I could be wrong on that, but I think my theory will get a lot more credibility once Prime 4 finally comes out, not long after the remaster of the first game. But the real question at hand is, what's the optimum time frame to put a remaster of the first game out if the goal is to build hype for the fourth one? And that most definitely is the main goal here, I don't care what anybody says. Well, in December of 2022, I actually predicted that the Prime Trilogy would come out around August to get people ready for a March release of Prime 4. Obviously, the fact that the trilogy isn't being bundled together in one release means that I wasn't dead on, but I still think that about a year after re-releasing the first games, the optimum time frame to build hype will also give people time to breathe. Although the idea is to release one Prime game at a time till the fourth one's on store shelves, then I'd guess that my original prediction of March 2024 release would be pretty accurate, although it could end up being a big May release like Tears of the Kingdom is for 2023. If Prime 1's really the only Prime game coming to the Switch in the near future, though, then maybe, just maybe, Prime 4 would be ready in time for a holiday 2024 release. I mean, after all, it was a huge gut punch for fans when the game had to restart development after years of waiting, but that was all the way back in 2019, so is 4 years really that fast to develop Metroid Prime 4, or even 5 if it's an early 2024 release? I know Nintendo said they restarted the game completely from scratch, but surely they still had an idea of what they wanted the game to be in the first place, and with Retro Studios back on the case, it's not like they don't know the gist of a Metroid Prime game. All it needs to be is Samus moving around in first person on an epic adventure with an engine that Retro presumably still has on one of their old Dells they got lying around in their basement or something, so I don't really see why they couldn't have it out in about a year or so. Don't get me wrong though, I'm not demanding that Retro overwork themselves and hate their lives just so I can have fun for like a week or two and then move on to the next game. Trust me, I got a backlog of games, so I don't spend all day every day stressing about Metroid Prime 4. Ever since Prime 4 was announced in the first place, I've just been playing other games and watching shows and movies and things like that. I'm just saying that I think 5 years is plenty of time since the mystery of how to make Metroid fun in 3D was already solved decades ago. It's all by the same people working on the 4th game, no less. And yeah, you might think if Prime 4 were on track for release, and Nintendo would have at least given us some kind of an update, but they usually don't tell us too much about a game till it's ready to come out within about 6 months of whatever direct they bring it up in. The reason for this is because Nintendo learned their lesson with announcing Prime 4 in the first place. You see, at the time they announced Prime 4, the Switch had just come out, and the Wii U flopped harder than my neighbor Terry's business where he sold magical crystals that he made with his son's chemistry set, so they wanted to make sure the hype for their new console didn't die. Unfortunately, though, all they did was show their cards way too soon for something that wouldn't be ready until... well, it's still not ready now, so it makes sense not to say another word about Prime 4 till it's almost ready to come out, or even when it's finished for that matter. What does make sense, though, is to re-release the original Prime game about a year ahead of time of the long-awaited 4th game. Otherwise, why wait till now to put it out in the first place, you know? Anyway, that's all for today, but if you got a kick out of my incoherent, rambling, wild speculation and disturbing imagery, though, then you should check out this video I made about the pros and cons of gaming before the internet, but if you'll excuse me, though, I gotta go bail my dad out of the slammer again. Later.